Okay, before we introduce the guest or say hello to the guest, if you are coming into this episode and you have not listened to the icebreaker, maybe this is the first H Hour episode you've ever listened to because you know Marcus and you've come to the podcast through him, then be aware there is a previous interview with Marcus which lasts about 20 minutes. It's called an icebreaker. It will be before this episode in your podcast app or on YouTube, wherever you're watching. It consists of questions, a Q&A session with Marcus, and the questions were submitted by patrons of the podcast. There are excellent questions in there. Is a really good lead into this full podcast with Marcus. So I suggest you go back to that. You don't have to do that if you want to. You can ignore me completely and listen to this episode first, and then go back to it. Do whatever you want. I'm just advising you to do the icebreaker first. If you want to support the podcast, if you want to have a chance to ask questions in the future to guests, become a patron. Go to patreon.com/HK podcast, or go to hughkier.substack.com. And if you can't remember those or not sure how to spell them, look in the blurb of this episode and you will find the links there. Enough of that nonsense. Let's get on to the real stuff. Real talk. Marcus Peters, welcome to the H Hour studio. A pleasure to have you.
Pleasure to be here. Really excited. Thank you.
Good. And I think second Submariner, actually. I said third earlier on the icebreaker. I think you're the second Submariner in. However, you are the first Submariner. You're the first naval... You're not soldiers, are you? You're the first sailor. Oh, a submariner sailers.
Submariners,
You're
yeah.
Submariner. All right.
Technically.
You're the first Navy person.
Yes, let's get it right.
I think, who served during the Cold War.
Ah.
And as mentioned off air, a hot topic of mine right now, because I'm into my first book about the Cold War and learning a lot, which is really good. So I'm excited to talk about that. Before we go on to that, can I ask you, right, because of my supreme ignorance where anything ships and boats is concerned, and that is an important distinction, as I've been told previously by naval friends on the podcast. Okay, submarine classes.
Yes.
You mentioned O class, I think, during the icebreaker, as if I knew that. I was like, what is he talking about? Explain submarine classes to me, please.
Okay, so during the Cold War, we had the diesel submarines, which were glorified U-boats. So the Germans, obviously...
They must have stank.
Yeah, Das Unterseeboot was the German term for them, hence U-boat. So just basically a ship underwater. But they were diesel with battery power, so... On the surface, you ran diesel engines, which were very large bus engines, pretty much. And that would charge the batteries and show propulsion. And then when they wanted to dive, they would switch the diesels off because obviously you can't run your diesels easily. And then they would dive with the batteries. They could recharge batteries when they would dive, but they'd come to periscope depth, put a snorkel up and have a big plume of diesel smoke coming out of the little snorkel. So you could still see it. So it was not deemed a good thing, but they were very good for shallow waters. They were very good small crews, single decks, all that fun stuff. But yeah, that was often seen. And within the submarine community, there's a diesel boat submarine community going, that's proper submarines, right? And then the nuclears came along. So we borrowed some technology off the Americans and started to have nuclear attack boats. So the attack boat's job was very much around trying to get other submarines. So it would be submarine against submarine warfare. So they were fast, agile, could go, for extended periods of patrolling, or they were there to attack surface fleet. They could also do some other stuff like sneaky beaky work with the boat squadron and that type of thing. And the boat squadron do deploy from those. And then we have the deterrent patrols.
When you say boat squadron, you mean SBS?
The SBS, yeah. And then you've got the deterrent patrols, which are classed as bombers. In the community, we call them bombers, SSBNs for their classification. But their job is the deterrent. They carry conventional torpedoes, but they carry nuclear warheads and up to 16 missiles at any one time. And they are somewhere... One boat has always been on patrol since 1968, 69. So that's been a continuous patrol that we've had all of that time. And to this day, there is a boat on patrol as we speak. So you've got the diesels, you've got the hunter killers, and then you've got the bombers. What happened sort of late 80s, early 90s is they phased out the diesel submarines, went in favour of nukes only, and we've stuck to that. The others haven't. I mean, the Germans make still very good diesel submarines. They're very quiet, they're very efficient, and they sell them all over the world. But we are a nuclear only.
Why did we make that decision?
It was deemed as, the areas we were going to be operating that, we would want that extended range, I think. They were a bit more technical and long lasting, and it just went that route. And you can operate in deeper water and rougher seas, tending to be with those. But yeah, so that was the sort of classifications.
Where do the letters come in? What's O class?
It's always the first name of the boat. So, like, if you look at the Type 42 destroyers, which is surface fleet, they were Sheffield class because Sheffield was the first of a class. So whatever ship name is the first of. So the O boats were Oberon class. O boats. Our boats were
Oberon class.
Oberon.
Oberon,
class.
and because the Oberon was the first of that class.
And they were all Oberon, Ocelot, Opossum, all had an O in their name. Resolution class were the bombers, Polaris. There was Resolution, Repulse, Revenge.
Why is none of my friends explained this to me before? My naval friends.
It's
right. Okay, that makes sense now.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So O class, for example, but what is that class? Like, technically, what is different about that class to, I don't know, the next class?
It was, there was a range of classes of submarines. They were just the last class of diesels that we had. There were, if you go down to the submarine.
So O class was the last class of diesels, for example.
If you went before that, you had like the A class submarines, which were in the 50s and 60s. Before that, you had original T-boats in the war. We also had T-boats, which were nuclear, but they were Trafalgar class. So there was Trafalgar and Turbulent and Tireless, and you had the S-class, which was Spartan and Superb. And so you had all of these different sort of, boats that began with the single letter. And then the community just called them, I was on T-boats, I was on S-boats, I was on R-boats.
So they're just particular types, basically.
That's all they
class
are
a particular type.
Absolutely. That's all it is.
All right.
Yeah.
It's like a...
NATO logistics, think of it that way. You know what I mean? So,
okay, thank you for clearing that.
That's all right.
That makes a lot of sense now. Okay, the letter designation, the types.
And nukes are also seen as a bit more, I would disagree with this, but the general opinion, particularly if you speak to the diesel submariners, is, well, nuclear boats are just like hotels, aren't they? Because they're bigger and, you get a shower occasionally and that type of thing. Whereas on diesel boats, you don't. And you hot bunked all the time on a diesel boat, or you lived in a hammock between the torpedo tubes, which was my first bed on a submarine.
Oh, you don't hot bunk in a nuclear?
On the bombers, predominantly no. On the, although it depends how many you're carrying, because you'll have your ship's crew, but you'll carry sea riders, which will be either guests or people under training.
Okay.
So they could be transferred from the surface fleet, even as a senior rate. Now, in NCO, you could be transferred to the submarine fleet, but you don't get a bed because you're not qualified. Right? So it'd be like a senior NCO coming across to your world and not got his wings. He's not qualified. He's not a para. He's not airborne. He's a wannabe, and we hope he gets there, but that doesn't give you the right to sleep in a bed. So you might hot bunk with somebody, or you'll have a camp bed between the missile tubes or whatever.
Really?
Yeah.
I've been on a submarine once and once only, and that was HMS Talent.
Oh, yeah. T-boat.
Yeah. T-boat.
T-boat.
T-class.
T-class, yeah. T-boat.
Ah, now I know why it's called T-class.
Exactly.
It's Trafalgar.
Yeah. And what did you think?
The space shot, I expected it to be cramped, right?
Mm-hmm.
I say cramped. I expected it to be, confined space. But in my naivety, I'm sure they were hot bunking on that.
They were. They would have been.
I'm sure they were, yeah. But it wasn't just. So I mean, the space between the bunks, like you lie in the bunk, if you're laying in your back on your bed, the ceiling is your limit, right? If you're laying in your back on the bunk on HMS Talent, as I saw it, the ceiling is not the limit. It's about half a foot in front of your face is the limit. Maybe 8 inches, maybe 12 inches, as I recall. Maybe it's probably more than that.
No, you're about right.
And above you as well, you've got a little drop-down shelf. You can grab a book out, which obviously reduces space again, or book or whatever you're going to get out, or a sock.
Yeah, whatever you want. Just make sure you get your sock, not your mates. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. Oh my God. Are there women on submarine service?
There are now, yeah. Not when I served.
There. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it particularly. I think, it's interesting. I've had a lot of discussions in the civilian world about DEI and about, equal pay and gender diversity and all that sort of stuff. To me, I think maybe not all people in the military, think like this, but for me, it isn't a question of what gender you are. Can you do the job? Are you fit enough, capable enough to do the job? I don't really care, because I see if I'm working with a weapons tech, that's all they are. They just happen to wear a bra. So, as long as they are fit enough and they can get me out of compartment and all those things, I don't have a particular problem with it. I can understand then from a family perspective why it caused such problems, because if you're underwater for 6 months at a time in a predominantly male environment and there are females, well, unfortunately, the purpose of us being on this planet is to, interact, and that interaction can cause problems.
Yeah. This I go back and forth on this in my head, opinion on this so all the time, and that is military. That is females in frontline units. I'll describe it as that. Right, be that under the water, be that on the water, be that on land, and I go back and forth on it for that reason. And yes, physical capability, mental capability, capability in general as to the job, right? Individually, so an individual's capability to the job is one thing. Then, as you said, there is the human nature of people, and
as we saw with the First Sea Lord recently, it happens to the best of us.
Yeah. What is an absolute, I would say, is an absolute fact is that within a unit, within a team of people doing whatever, right? I think there is a level of emotional and social relationship stability that if you breach that level and instability, right? Stability. If you go below that level of stability, then it impacts the capability of that team to do the mission they're there to do.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that.
Corporate environment or military environment, whatever, right? Now, that level of instability, the threshold, varies depending on the vocation, depending on what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I would say an absolute fact is one of the things that influences where your team is in relations to that threshold is the demographics of the people that make up the team, as well as the capability of the people that make up the team and all the rest of it. Now, where the military is concerned, let's talk army. That's my experience. Frontline, infantry unit, whatever. Well, I say whatever. We're just generalizing. I'm not going to pick on specific regiments or corps or whatever. Predominantly male environments for good reason, because men tend to be really good at that stuff compared to women. It has to introduce in women into a frontline male only unit does absolutely influence how that unit, the men in that unit, get on with each other and the way they perceive each other. It introduces an additional dynamic. It's not just now about team mission tomorrow, going out, or tonight, or in an hour, or whatever, going out to do that mission. You've got this other dynamic in that there is a female or females there, and men have instincts about them.
Yeah.
And it adds in a layer of competition between them, spoken or unspoken, that men cannot get away from. Most men cannot get away from. It's human nature. It is a weakness of ours. Fact.
It's DNA based.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that influences the capability of the unit.
No, I think you're right, and I think it is that team dynamics aspect as opposed to their individual capability. And I've got friends who are serving now, and some have very strong opinions one way or the other. what I will say is, that there are some very capable women out there in the military doing some incredible things. And they still get a torrid time at times. And, we're going off tangent now, but, when I look at things like, the sexual assaults and stuff like that goes, it's just horrific. And
I wasn't, I'm not even talking about that.
No, but you end up going down. It's a very complex picture, I think. I think one of the things we can do better, and then this is coming from, now having grown up daughters. Do you know the young lady that was at Sandhurst who committed suicide, and she'd been having affairs with her NCOs, and it's quite a big case in the media. She was an officer candidate, yeah, and she came from our village.
When was that?
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago now, but it was all in the press.
Okay.
But she'd been having, while she was at Sandhurst, she'd had a couple of affairs and with training staff NCOs, which, is that her fault? Is that his fault?
So she was a student there?
She was a student,
okay.
Which I find bonkers. But, I think I look at it through the eyes of my daughters. If my daughter came to me today and said, I'm joining the military, how would I feel about that? Well, I'd be proud of that. I'd want her to go and have a successful career and do what she wants. But I'd also want to ensure that the MOD and the service taught those men and women around her to treat her with respect and dignity and all the things that I want my son to experience. Unfortunately, from a societal point of view, that doesn't always happen. And I don't think the MOD have got a grasp of that. They're not, I don't see a sitting down of young men and having that explanation about respecting women, because not all young men will be brought up to respect women. That's the first thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
We inherit them in the military, and as an NCO, you've got to get your stamp on that. But how do you do that? I think there's a lot more to this than meets the eye.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's extremely complicated. That's why I think. That's why I think on the balance, I think. If you're talking about the capability of the military, right, and if the assumption is that if your military is more capable, then that means there's less risk to life, depending on what you're doing, generally, right? Your own life, okay? More chance of succeeding in the mission.
Yeah.
And introducing that layer of complexity, females into the front line, is not a great idea if you're just talking on that. Now, the mistake that is made. And I'm really actually evolving my thinking as we're talking, because I haven't talked about this for a long time on the podcast, and I'm glad we are, because it's a difficult subject, but it's important, right? Yeah. Because one of the things that is a mistake, I think, is that people who argue against people may incorrectly think that not allowing women onto the front line is basically saying it's because they're not good enough or they're too weak. It's actually the opposite. If I was to wave my magic wand and make a decision today, okay, would we allow women on the front line or not? And if I could say, no, we don't allow it, but no women would be upset by that. They'd not be hurt by that. Everyone would be fine. If I could wave that, because people have feelings, right? If I could wave that magic wand, I say, no, don't have them on the front line. But the reason would be, it's not because women aren't good enough. Is because I know the weaknesses of men.
Yes.
That is why. And the weaknesses of men will impact the team. And it would be better off, we don't mix it. Hey, and if you're good with that, then let's not do it. And so women went, yeah, let's not do it. Cool, we're all good then. Why cause that issue?
Yeah, and I think the other thing about it is, if I look at it from a corporate eyes, I don't really care about gender. I want the right people in the right roles with the right skill sets. And actually, you could argue, well, there are roles within the military that are better suited to women than men. Look, PSYOPs, for example, right? Women think in a very different space, team dynamics and all that sort of military intelligence stuff. Actually, some women are going to be far better at that than some men in how they process information, how they multitask, how they think outside the box. Women are very good at that sort of thing, men less so. I'm generalizing, but, are you looking at it in that way that you're going, well, it's okay to have an all-female team because they're very good at that, as opposed to we need an all-male team over here because that's very good at that. I think it's a complex picture, but we have to do better. That's the thing. That, you know, we have to do better generally. The one thing we absolutely have to stand up for. I mean, we were at the National Transition event, and Al Khan's was speaking. And
the Mission Motorsport National Transition event.
Yes, Mission Motorsport National Transition.
Excellent event. Yeah,
the number one premium event. Absolutely. I need to get that out there. But he was speaking this year, and literally in the press, you know, a few days before, there'd been all sorts of horror stories coming out. You know, those stories that you and I know that are the extreme, but equally after that event, you know, I was doing some one-to-one mentoring and coaching with an individual, and you know, she'd had a very similar experience, and it involved assault. It had been reported to the military police, and never heard a thing. And she ended up leaving service because it was almost brushed under the carpet.
What did she service?
I'm not going to tell you which service.
Okay,
but just for confidentiality.
There is another aspect to this in that. There's another factor in this. I say factor. This is not me excusing it. It's that men together, day in, day out in the military, almost day in, day out. Right? If the amount of assaults or sexual assaults or racism accusations or anything that I could throw around, right? Yeah. Through my own experience serving, right? If I wanted to, I could, but I wouldn't, and I know not to, because everything was in the context at the time, joking about, messing about, and I did say, by the way, I did actually just say there's sexual assault, you know, because there's the bar for sexual assault in terms of what actually happens is very, very low these days.
Very low.
It's very low, very low, right?
Yeah.
I could, but I know not to. Now, that's normalized behavior amongst men, but that's guys being guys. You know, guys will GBH each other. They will literally GB, and that's in the civvy world, rugby teams, football teams, pick your group of people and it will happen. That's guys. Now, again, if that behavior is normalized and then a woman is introduced into that, to your point earlier, not all men, not all people are equal. No. Some people are brought up very differently. Some people have very different morals and ethics. Some people have very different awareness of other people's emotional states or what pushes their buttons or what doesn't, you know? And they may behave in the same way that they behave in the rest of their team members who are all men. Yeah. And go, for example, slapping an ass. Now, I am absolutely not trying to play down sexual assault or anything towards women in the military. I'm just making the point again. It's very complex.
The intention behind it may not be, you know, what we think, and I think that's why it's incumbent on organisations, whether it be civilian or military, to look at this broader, to look at, you know, where are the risks, opportunities and threats type approach, and say, well, okay, what do we need to bring in? Do we need to bring education programs in? Do we need to educate our NCOs? I mean, to be in a training establishment and for NCOs to be having an affairs with students is crazy. Absolutely. And who is allowing that to happen? Because that must be knowledge. Whether you've been in frontline unit, you know that. You don't keep secrets in the military. Somebody would have known that's going on. So why did nobody deal with it? And that's the thing. It's a bit like being in a workplace setting. You know that people are taking drugs socially. Why is nobody addressing it? And it's those hard conversations we need to have.
Well, on that Sandhurst student lady example, you know, when you first said that, and thinking it now, she committed suicide. Yeah. Now, I would say, was it ever a fault? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's every single one of those NCOs that are there that was as in sexually involved there, and every one of them who knew about it and allowed it to go on. 100%. Zero blame on her whatsoever. At worst, it's naivety on her part. You know, that is and take the gender out of it. You know, that's people in a position of authority taking advantage of or allowing something to happen. They know better. They should know better, right? I've got no idea what her age was, but regardless of her age, maybe she was 30. I don't know. She probably wasn't, right? And maybe they were, she probably wasn't. It's irrespective of that. It's something that really pisses me off. Is that
Totally.
the abuse of authority in place, especially when you should know
Well,
better.
look at the Coldplay video recently, and the guy who was having an affair with the HR manager. I mean, he got the spotlight. HR director. They knew better. You can't cry about it afterwards. You knew better.
Yeah,
take accountability.
I saw some stuff online about, they shouldn't. They've been suspended. It shouldn't have happened. I was thinking, down at the company, what do they expect?
Exactly.
What do they expect?
Exactly.
Shareholders, you got revenue and all that. I'm not surprised they got suspended. I wouldn't expect them to come back either.
And that's the point. I mean, I know of an instance of a company that basically did a big promotion for their company because it was a certain event. They put a free bar on, invited everybody from the company, 10,000 people, free bar, very little food because there was queues to get in, right? Average age employee, 29, 30, right? Surprise, surprise, 20 odd instances of inappropriate behavior and a shitload of HR cases. Well, that ain't rocket science, is it? Right? Because when you're planning that event, you'd be going, is it a good idea to have a free bar? We've got a lot of young people here, and there's a lot of people who will de-stress in that environment, think that they're just at a normal bar, and they will act inappropriately. That's how you should be assessing that situation. The problem is they don't.
Well, yeah, but there's also a problem there with the law, maybe.
No,
right,
there
in
is
that the bar,
the bar is so
that context. I think that in a lot of cases, context is not paid enough attention to and not considered enough, right? And I give you, I'm going to give an example. It's not a good example because it didn't actually go to court, but so Coke has commented in the chat here that, so I've mentioned before, but when I was in training, I got battered a few times by one of the training instructors, right?
Yeah.
And he said, so am I insinuating that the corporal who battered me should be in prison? No, absolutely not. In the context of it, no, absolutely not. And did I deserve it? Well, I deserve punishment. I got physical punishment. Did I know that that's what I might get because of that instructor is? Yeah. Did I still fuck up? Yeah.
There's a consequence to life. Absolute. Yeah.
It's so difficult.
And I think the other thing is, and I feel like Uncle Albert now sitting on a bollard talking about, when I was on HMS Victory, but society has changed. I was talking to a training organisation recently. We were talking about societal shift. And if you look at things like when I was in the military, when I first joined, smoking was acceptable. They issued us 200 cigarettes for, was it £2, £3? You registered as a smoker. You got 6 cigarette stamps. They were Navy produced cigarettes with a blue line down. Every non-smoker would also register, get the cigarette stamps and sell them in the black market. So you were smoking 60 a day of these god-awful things, right? But gays weren't allowed in the military, right? Now, look, now, homosexuality is more societally acceptable than cigarettes. That's how society has shifted.
True, that's true, yeah.
Right.
I know a guy who got booted out. Of the Marines.
Yep.
Because he was gay.
Yep.
Crazy.
I know both people who did and were discharged when they'd done nothing wrong. And I know a couple of people who wanted to leave, couldn't be bothered to wait the time of paid voluntary release and do your 18 months notice as it used to be. So they just put their hand up and go, I've got feelings for my NCO. And then they were out very quickly. Abuse the system. But you look at that societal shift, and I think often we don't realise that also the reason that the bar is shifting is because society's acceptance is shifting. It's a bit like, somebody asked me the other day about, well, when you were at school, how many people had ADHD? I can't think of a single person. I don't know anybody that had any label when I was at school.
Yeah,
but now, because
were you in a special needs school though? Because they would have been all at special needs school.
Everybody's the same, yeah. Well, that's the thing, but now there's more testing. Yeah. There's more research. There's more, and I think we sometimes forget that societal shift. that we think about when, it's a very long time ago now, as Coke rightly says, I'm an old guy. But, looking back then to the late, mid-80s, it was, there were things that happened that weren't.
I'm just going to bring up another comment that Coke's made in the chat. And normally I leave the questions to Liam, but if they're relevant, I'll bring them in. So
Absolutely.
So this is directed at me. So I've got 2 daughters. So he said, so this is carrying on from the corporal who battered me comment. He said, so if your daughters joined the paras and got beat by a corporal, you'd be okay with it. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say,
oh, that's an interesting
but they
question.
wouldn't get battered.
No.
This goes exactly to my point about men and women and the differences, right?
Yeah.
They would not get battered.
Because they wouldn't fuck up in the first place.
If they got battered by a corporal, absolutely, I'd be annoyed with that, right? If it was my son, if it was my sons and they went in and they fucked up and they got battered by a corporal, would I be okay with it? Absolutely. Like 100%. 100%. I don't know, and I'm not going to ask you. I don't know. Like different kettle of fish. I would be okay with it, right? Yeah, I would be okay with it. Now, obviously, there's a limit. Like, I didn't get battered to the point I was hospitalized. I got a few digs.
Spin it around then.
Right. So the daughters, they wouldn't get, because, again, the dynamic between male and female, I'd be shocked if a male instructor in a training environment decided that fists to a female was going to solve it. Because if they're in a training environment and they've been doing that for any length of time.
But you've just made an assumption.
Go on.
That the training instructor is male. What if she gets battered by a corporal, but it's female corporal?
Ooh.
Because that's potentially could happen nowadays.
Ooh.
And in the US military, you do get that.
I feel like I would be less angry with it if it was a female, but I still wouldn't be okay with it. But with my sons, I would be okay with it if I had sons, And
I think there is.
That's a good.
You go back to the caveman.
Again, this is all hypothetical.
I know. Yeah.
If my daughters are listening to this, Daddy, look after you.
Absolutely. And if my daughter's looking after, love you lot. And my son, I love him too. But there is that, I think, the caveman instinct. When you go back to, particularly when you've been in stressful environments. What happens is in those stressful environments is the black cloud syndrome comes in and the brain starts to just go down to basic functionality. And that's where we, fight or flight and certain reactions, And I remember my son, 16, 17, getting into a fight, wasn't overly bothered about it, to be honest. But I remember my daughter being in a relationship, she'd be a similar age, and there was no physicality involved, but the guy said some pretty unpleasant things about her. And trust me, I was nearly breaking the door down to get to this guy. It triggered something inside of me that was irrational, really. And it took my wife to point out to me that it was irrational, but I was it just possessed. And I think there is an element of that in men, and I'm not saying that women are completely rational either. I've known some very irrational women in my time. Luckily, my wife isn't, if she's watching. But you know what I mean? There is this emotional aspect to this debate. And I think it's worthy to have the debate. You can't shy away from this stuff. I just wish the MOD would have a broader debate on it and look at their safeguarding in a different way.
I think it's, I know you, no, I agree. And, the fact of the matter is that we do have women in the military. They are allowed to serve in frontline units. Obviously, if they meet the criteria and pass whatever they need to pass. And so everything we can do to minimize impact of the capability of the frontline troops, of the frontline units, and minimize negative experiences for everyone serving, including women, right? Then the better. Coates just said that's a double standard, Hugh. What am I? Absolutely, it is, because they're two totally different circumstances. And the point, I think, and just going back onto it. Sorry, I think most people, men and women, will know that you can the way to go about achieving what you need to achieve, influence someone. In that example, mess up in training. Okay, as an instructor, I need to influence that person to not do it again. And there are different courses of action you take depending on the details about that person.
Yeah.
Okay. And women, and this is again generalizing, men can be influenced. Women can be influenced by much less levels of aggression, for example, if you're going to go the aggressive path than men. You know, just often getting a bit shouty, right?
Yep.
Can work. Okay, it can work. Not can work. Is compared to the men, right? I am really focusing specifically here, but there's a lot of different ways you would influence women compared to a lot of different ways you influence men. Women are much better at understanding the fucking language you're using and working out when you're not happy about something. You can influence women a lot better with words than you can men. Which
and
is
body
why
language.
Violence is much more utilized with men because we're morons when it comes to understanding words coming out of people's mouths and reading emotions and expressions. Women are better at it.
Well, I know, I agree with that. I think what has happened though, and I won't say the names because I'm not going to embarrass them, but I look at the training team my son had were absolutely amazing. They got a very high percentage of originals through that commando course. They influenced him in ways that I could never, even though I've probably said the same words to him, but they were, from a leadership perspective, when I look at it from a leadership point of view, they've obviously had a lot more development now as junior leaders and as NCOs. There's a lot more development like we would in the commercial, corporate environment. So I think that's good. And I think that what they're also doing is breaking that chain. When I look at my NCO, when I went through basic training at Raleigh, he was basically regurgitating what he'd had probably in the 1960s. And he was probably trained by somebody in the 1940s. So it was the same behaviors, the same expectations. It was like when I put my, drill hat on and my cane, this is the persona I need to be, and this is how I influence my people. I think that is changing. That's certainly the experience I'm seeing from some of the young people coming through. There's a lot more empathetic leadership. And I think there's all that, and my kids always say to me, the bit that always kills me with you, Dad, is when you say I'm disappointed. That phrase is more hurtful than screaming, shouting, slamming doors at them. Yeah, it's that resonance.
It's a good point you made there. Like I'm commenting on the ways to instruct based on my experiences, which were over 20 years ago now.
Yeah,
and when did that happen? And they could well be instructors in like para depot now or infantry training establishments now listening and going, "What? You're a fucking dinosaur." You're a fucking dinosaur, and probably are in some respects, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that was a tangent and a half, that was.
My God. Good call. They are difficult, and
we shouldn't shy away from it.
No,
Absolutely
I know.
not.
And my God, I try it. It's as we're going through there, and I'm going through my mind there, trying to like mental gymnastics. How can I say things here without sounding really bad, or without hurting people's feelings? Maybe the reality is you can't. If you can have a proper discussion about it, and sometimes you're going to put your foot in your mouth, like I probably did a few times there. But
absolutely,
that's the way it is. Okay, what was it like? What was the submarine service like during the Cold War? Towards the end of the Cold War, describe it to me. Do you look at it? Do you look back on it with pride?
I do now, yeah, because it's my service. I felt for many, many years, and I refused to go on parade locally and things like that because everybody had, like, I'll use a very old term, there was a character in the Kenny Everett show had all these medals. They all looked like them, and we got no medals because when you look at the Cold War, I think this is felt by a lot of Cold War veterans. I think in 21 they looked at stats. I think when they asked across the UK, how many veterans were there? There was about 1.85 million veterans, right, of an age. Well, you look at that, okay, it's 2021, but if you go 10 years before that, you're probably looking at 1.5 million of those would have served in the Cold War. Nobody got a medal. Most of the stuff we did was silent, classified, done behind doors because you didn't want to ignite fear with the Russians, and we didn't want to alloy. It was very secret, which is why there's so many movies about it. I mean, from James Bond to everything else. But what happened then was there was, as we were saying earlier, there was no index to it. There was no, oh, well, the war's over. It was just when the wall fell, things just weren't needed, and they started to say, well, we don't need all these people now. Let's start to shut some bases down in Germany because we're all friends now. Let's make a bunch of people redundant. So all the senior NCOs that I knew and respected started to disappear with redundancy packages. And it was like, what's going on? It was like the world was falling around us. The boats were old. We were having all sorts of problems. We were doing extended patrols. They'd ordered some new kit, but it was delayed, typical MOD procurement. And it was like, we did nothing wrong. We stood up and served for that from the 50s onwards to the 90s. All these people that did something, but there was no media coverage. There was no, and I know, I'm not trying to say it was better or worse, but there was no media coverage like Iraq and Afghanistan. It wasn't frontline attention. It didn't get the sort of the media through to culture impact. And you ask most people of 20 age or above, what's a Cold War? They won't tell you. They don't know. It's only because of some of the Sky News discussions on Ukraine at the moment that we're starting to make reference to the Cold War. But people just didn't get it. And then,
well, it was constantly shifting dynamic as well. It wasn't just West versus East. It was it was China versus Russia versus America, basically. And the allegiances between the three was also constantly changing, which people don't realize.
And there was, there are missions which are still classified now that, we came very close to the brink many a time. And those people that were serving, you're here because of them. But there was no recognition of that. There is no parade. There is no medal. There is no anything. And that, I think, has always been a discussion point for a lot of the veterans because it was fastly replaced. It was like, well, that doesn't matter anymore because we've got Iraq and Afghan, right? And those people are very important. And don't get me wrong, those people that served in those conflicts, absolutely, and you're one of them, absolutely important. You did a great job, and I'm not taking away from that. But this silent war that went on, it was hard to comprehend when you're out on patrol because you're still doing your job. And I remember, I've still got at home a transcript of the news used to come. You come up to periscope depth and you get a downburst of data and go deep, and there'd be all sorts of orders, but you get the news. And there was just this comment, Margaret Thatcher's gone and John Major's in. He's like, change of prime minister. And it was like, but we're still at sea. We're still on patrol. So it was an interesting time, but I loved it. Well, I grew to love it because I put in for frigates in Plymouth. And the only reason I joined the Navy was because I came from the Black Country. The expectation was that I was going to go in a factory. My mum and dad couldn't afford for me to go to university. And I just remember being at school and going to see the careers advisor. And I told this to a bunch of kids recently, but they dragged me down on the third attempt and they said, right, sit with the careers advisor. She's going to give you guidance on where your career is going to be. And she put 3 factory jobs in front of me. And I'm not, belittling anybody who works in manufacturing, but I just thought, I want so much more experience of life from that. And, I played around with her and ended up getting into trouble with the headmaster because of it, because I told her I wanted to go into retail. She got excited. She said, do you know what you want to do? I said, yeah, I know the perfect job. She said, what? I said, bra fitting. I've seen it at Marks and Spencer's. I think I'd be pretty good at that. That didn't end well. But I went to AFCO and said, let me join up. Army were there, giving it, Germany's a great place. No. Falklands is good. It's now ours. We're putting a lot of effort into Falklands. No, it's a bit cold and there's penguins.
Have you been out there?
No.
Oh, don't bother.
No bother. Exactly. RAF were at lunch and the Navy were like, we've got all this stuff. And it was like, we're looking for chefs, can't cook. looking for stokers. Well, it's in the Titanic film and they're the last out of the engine room. That ain't going to happen. And they said, oh, we're looking for weapons techs. I said, well, what's that? They said everything from small arms to missiles and everything in between. So I was really interested in the technology. I was interested in the travel and, put in for Plymouth frigates and ended up in submarines in Scotland. So I didn't get my choices. But when I got to the submarine service, the one thing that I really liked about it was, unlike the rest of the fleet, it was a bit more of a community, a bit like, I assume the paras and the Marines are, it's close-knit communities. You're away at sea for a long periods of time. You didn't call NCOs by their rank, first name terms, and very small teams. The sort of technology was Gucci, it was cutting edge, it was very high. I mean, some of the engineers that I work with were some of the best I've ever worked with. I mean, we had a particular incident on board a boat. What they did with a desktop lathe, it's a suitcase that they make into a lathe, and they manufactured blanking plates for a system based upon that. They got some award for it, but if they don't do that, that submarine doesn't surface ever. It was that sort of risk profile. And just brilliant people, good crack, close-knit community, great engineering, but you couldn't talk to anybody about it. You get home and, I remember coming back from sea off a patrol. We'd been extended. We were due out for about 6 weeks, 7 weeks, end up in 3 months. You're just eating crap, basically.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is the selection of a submarine captain, if there is a selection of a submarine captain,
parishes.
Is it?
It's called parishes.
It's called
parishes.
Parishes.
Yeah.
So is it a more stringent sort of selection process than a ship captain, for example?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you know anything about it?
Been involved in parishes once, but I've got a friend.
Parishes is what, the selection process of court?
Yeah. So it's different to the US Navy. US Navy, any officer can go the route to become a captain. So if you're an engineering officer, you can go that route. In ours, it tends to be the seaman branch, which is navigators, those types. But when they will go through from being sort of a basic navigator up through the system, they end up becoming a first lieutenant. So they're the executive officer to the captain. And then they'll get put forward for selection to captain, which is their ultimate goal, to command a boat. They'll also, as part of that process, they'll be serving on ships as well. So I've got a friend who's a navigation officer at the moment. He will serve on ships for periods of time, keep his navigation skills up to date, look at it from a ship's perspective as well as a submarine's perspective. But ultimately, he's a submariner wanting to be a captain. And at some point, they get put forward, and there's normally a cohort, and it's I think it's 6 months, and they throw everything. It's every possible scenario, normally all at once, and they gradually build up to it, and it's a pass-fail. And if you fail, it's one attempt. There's no second attempt to this. It's pass-fail. Your career's done if you fail it.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's...
Oh, my God. The pressure.
And you're at sea. You're away from family. It's, and you've got, the training staff. You've been on board a boat. You understand, what the control room size is. You imagine everybody's there doing their thing. You're with a live submarine, with a live crew, that you get it wrong. It ain't you that's dying, right?
Oh, my God.
So the pressure, parishes is one of the most intense things ever.
Is that the informal name for it, parishes?
I think so, yeah. I don't know I think submarine command training school or whatever, but yeah, parishes is what it's referred to.
It is something I'm learning to love, or getting to love as I learn more about it, is the naval language.
There's so much. There's actually a book called Jack Speak.
I've got it.
Oh, you got it.
One of the first Navy guys I interviewed, a guy called Gav. I'm sure it was Gavin Tuak, a good friend who gave it to me. And he was serving until very recently, actually. He's now working at Barclays. And he gave me the book. And I knew some terms from interviewing him, interviewing his oppo called Simon Piles, another good friend. It may have been Simon who gave me the book, actually. I think it was Gav. And I opened that book. That's like a dictionary of Jack speak, as in slang, naval speak. Crazy. But the hundreds of years of history.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's almost like an alternative history book.
It is.
You know?
Well, senior service for a reason. The reason that when we stand up, you have to stand up for that reason. You know, we were there before you lot, you know. But it was all that sort of fun stuff. I know. Got to be done. But like, yeah, if you ever go down to the like Portsmouth Dockyard, which is a brilliant visit, and I can't shout about that enough, but you go on board like Victory and you suddenly realise things that you just say come from that, you know, 4 square meals a day comes from the square plates that fitted in the rafters. You know, just things like that. Can't swing a cat. You know, cat o' nine tails. There's not enough room to swing it around.
Right, yeah. You know? Yeah. Well, when I worked for a company called Blue Abyss a few years back, and the world's first commercial astronaut training center, ex-military guy, John Rickers, he's the CEO. And I went out with him to Marseille. We were doing some research out there. And one of the places, it was Marseille, I'm sure it was. Anyway, one of the things I saw when we were there was I'm pretty sure I'm getting this right, is the oldest ever military sub. And it's something like 1903, this thing. And they sank and they recovered it. And it's on land. You can see this thing. It is
We've got our own
crazy thing
called Holland 1.
Okay.
And that's at the Submarine Museum now.
And if the museum you were mentioning to me. Yeah. Okay.
If you want to go down to Submarine Museum in Portsmouth, it's across the water in Gosport. I've got a very, very good friend. He's actually my old divisional officer, best divisional officer I ever had. So shout out to Pete Chilcott, legend of a guy. And he used to work for me as well, which is a strange reverse of fortune. But yeah, he's a guide there, and there's an A-boat out the water, and you can go on it. But the first submarine,
A-boat?
Yeah, it's one of the class. It's a 1950s diesel submarine out the water. They've cut holes in the side so you can walk through the boat. But they do like submarine alarms and depth charges and make it a bit fun for the kids.
That's pretty cool.
But yeah, it's a really cool museum, and they've even got like the Jolly Rogers from previous ships, and yeah, it's really cool. Nice. But yeah, I mean, parishes is one of the most pressurized things, and you know, when you look at why the submariners think they are more elite than surface fleet, and I'll get a lot of hate, no doubt, from the surface fleet. One, we get more money. It was always special forces pay as well, which was quite Gucci, you know. We're one of those, but we did. I mean, like as an able seaman, I was on more money than a leading hand, which is like a Lancejack.
It makes sense to me. It makes total sense to me.
But the reason is when you join, the thing that submariners are most proud of is their dolphins. All right.
I got gifted a set of gold dolphins by someone, by the Submariner before. Yeah, I love them.
And they're very thin, and that's our medal, right? Because that means that you've qualified. It's a bit like your para wings, right? You can put all your medals in the box, but your para wings are very, very special to you, right? You know?
Well, just a bit of insight for you. The parachute regiment's different. It's the cat badge that is very precious.
Well, there you go. Well, but there's a connection, isn't there? That proves that you've been given that to say you've achieved a certain standard, right? Mm-hmm. Well, with the submarine dolphins, when you join your boat, you have to do what they call the Part 3 training. It doesn't matter what rank you are. And it means that no matter what your trade is, what your rank is, and where you work on the sub, you have to learn every single system on that submarine.
Oh.
Forward to aft. And I mean, it's proper. It's an A4 ring binder.
How long does that training last?
Like a whole patrol for me, like 3 months.
Well, you do it on the ship when you...
Yeah, when you're off watch, boat, you're learning all the time. And like you'd have all these individual things you had to get signed off, and then you went for an interview board, which was about an hour and a half with normally a captain or first lieutenant, another officer, and a senior NCO. And they were just quick fire questions. What would you do in this scenario? Where would you go? And all that. But it's things like, I remember the chief stoker, would only see you when he was on watch in the control room. And you'd go up there and you'd have to get your firefighting sign off. And he'd say, right, start at the front of the boat, bottom level. I want every fire extinguisher, type and location, forward to aft. Well, there could be like 400 or 500 fire extinguishers, but you've got to go through it. And then you've got to do, where are the ring mains? Where are the valves? What's the valve called? So, what's MG323? What does it isolate? Is it air, pneumatics? Is it hydraulics? Is it firefighting system? What's the safety critical equipment? How would you do the escape? And it doesn't matter if you're a chef, you've got to learn that. So the reason being is if you go back aft as a chef to get, I don't know, bread mix or potatoes, and there's a fire, you're the immediate attack party. You're the guy on the ground. You know, if you see a hydraulic leak, you're the one that's going to isolate it. It's not the stokers who are there in the engine room. It's you. You're the person. Or you would then support those. You don't go, I'm a chef, I'm going to go forward. You've got to deal with it. Because when things go pear-shaped on the boats, you're underwater, you know, and a lot of the time you can't surface. So you've got to deal with it. Otherwise, everybody dies. And it's that responsibility and accountability that you feel as a submariner, which is why I think we feel we're quite special. In that respect.
That doesn't happen on ships.
No, you tend to learn. You might be part of the firefighting attack party. You learn your route, your bit, and you'll look after your section of the ship. But they're so big, you couldn't possibly learn it all, could you?
You deserve every penny of that Special Forces payment.
Thank you.
Never mind the haters. Never mind the haters. It is, in all seriousness, it is a service I look on and admire. And I think, man, you've heard the word alley. Have you heard the word alley? You know, alley, for people who aren't aware of it, like a parachute regiment born word. Now it's adopted by everyone, a lot of army anyway, and it means... I did a whole article on this online to try and explain what alley means, right?
Okay.
I know, and because it means different things in different scenarios. In this scenario, I'd say it's a cool job. It's a difficult job. It's a job that's got respect. It's a job that's difficult to get into and do, and that's how we look on the submarine service. But also, it's also like, man, would it also be a misery sometimes? Absolutely. You know,
it's the things you don't realize. I mean, like, you know, you're talking about what's life like. I remember my first patrol on a bomber, and because I'm a hobbit, right? I'm sitting down, but I am a hobbit, right? If you were below 5'7", that bunk space we talked about, which was 18 inches and, you know, sort of 6 foot long, whatever it was, they'd say, "Oh, you're a hobbit. You've got to have a sack of potatoes, a sack of bread mix, and a sack of this at the end of your bed."
Because you've got space.
Because my feet didn't touch the ground. If you were not a hobbit, you still got the potatoes and the bread mix. So you just bent your legs sleeping. The reason that and on the bombers, you don't get told where you're going. You sort of know certain seas, because in the bilges, if you've got very, very cold water and the boat's hot, you get a lot of condensation. If you don't get a lot of condensation, you're in colder water. Hotter water. But that's about it. The only people that know is the captain, the XO, and the navigators. That's it. But you'd know when you were coming back because the food was running out. You know, all the sacks of potatoes had gone off the bunk space. And we used to also what they call double deck. So you'd have the deck, and then they would put like tins of tomatoes, beans, and then you put cardboard down and then put lino. So you'd raise the deck. So as the deck started to disappear, you know that actually we must be getting back because we've got no food, you know. So there's little things like that. You sort of go, well, yeah, that was a bit interesting. And storing ship was always interesting. That used to be great because they'd have the entire ship's company, just like in Nelson's day, and you get things off the jetty and you handball it down, all down vertical ladders and all that. But like the Mars bars, you'd start with 600 Mars bars and you'd have 3 left when you got to, and then the chef's going mad. Where's all my Mars bars gone? You know.
My God.
So yeah,
we're going to take a pause for 2 minutes. I think up the toilet, and then we come back. I've got a question to start you off.
Cool.
If I don't have the baseball cap on, people start noticing my receding hairline. They'd never notice otherwise. I'm only joking.
That's the trick, isn't it?
Question. You on the icebreaker, you said that when you left the service, you felt ashamed of your service for a long time. Can I ask why?
So I was in a strange position that I actually had an accident on board ship. So we had an emergency situation. Somebody, I won't go into all the details, but basically somebody had left a hatch open that was never, ever left open. There was a light indicator if it was open for security reasons. The people in the control area could see that it was open because it shouldn't ever be open. Lights are out, went in. We were sort of in a fire environment.
The lights were out?
Yeah. So it was dark. So we went in with thermal imaging cameras and I fell through the hatch.
Why didn't you put the lights on?
They were out. Electrical problem.
Okay.
So it was like an emergency scenario. So
Okay.
But I stepped through the hatch, not knowing. It's that thing where you think there's a deck, there's not. Sort of half fell in, so I sort of hit hard the hatch area and then fell through it. Sort of got myself back up and all the rest of it, but I was properly winded and in battered, like. And I would say falling wasn't the problem; it was what I hit that was the problem, you know. Anyway, I sort of came out of the compartment. Medics checked me over.
You mean hitting the edge of the hatch was the problem?
Yeah, and also some other kit. When I fell through the hatch, I actually bounced off a couple of things as well.
You can't mention, I assume.
No.
Okay.
And anyway, and a good friend of mine who was the medic, you know, checked me over, and I just got this like lovely red welt around my ribs. Thought nothing of it. He said, "Oh, you should be fine. You know, usual thing. Take some ibuprofen, and you'll be fine." And I was off watch, due to come on watch about 6 hours later. So I went to get my head down in that luxurious bed that I've got, and I was middle rack. Went to sleep pretty quickly, just battered. They give me some painkillers as well. And I woke up, and it was like an elephant was sitting on my chest. Couldn't breathe. Felt literally, tried to stand up, couldn't. Pain was just, literally couldn't breathe. Crawled on all fours out of the bunk space, fell through the hatch into the missile compartment. And the guys on watch were like, "What's the matter with you?" You know, pissed sort of thing. And I couldn't talk. I couldn't get air out of my lungs. And I got a full complete pneumothorax.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. So and we're underwater.
From a rib, was it because of a rib?
I'd broken, I think, 6 ribs, but in like a V shape.
Oh my
so
God.
It shattered, and it had torn the lung. They reckon about an inch tear in the lung.
You were lucky to wake up.
Yeah, I know. I suddenly realise that now. Although it is on pretty much every episode of Casualty, pneumothorax is pretty interesting. It gets better.
Well, Casualty advantage is you've got an ambulance service or you're in a hospital.
Correct.
You're not on a submarine at whatever depth you're at. You know?
Exactly. With limited oxygen, and with so we carried a medic, which is one of the jobs halfway through my service, I tried to recategorize to medic. So I really wanted to do that job. Mainly because in between my sea service, I was part of the nuclear emergency response team, which is a pretty Gucci draft at the time. So we did all the, we supported Sellafield. We were first responders to any nuclear accident. We also did like co-location services and radiation monitoring and all that fun stuff. So we drove around in Land Rovers with blue lights, and I really enjoyed that. But to do it full time, you've got to be a medic. I tried to be captain medic, passed everything, but MOD said, "No, you're too short-handed where you are. You've got to stay." So that was always in the back of my mind, but I always had a lot of respect for the medics. Anyway, we had an LMA medic, a PO, and a doctor, proper doctor, who came in. I'm in the sick bay, and they're going, with no idea his oxygen levels are so low and he's not breathing. And they were like, "Right, it's a pneumothorax. We've got to obviously reinflate his lung." And the doctor at that point says, "I've never done this."
Oh, God.
Didn't fulfill me with confidence. And then gets his textbook out.
Was there any chance you were able to surface? No.
Well, that was the question, because should we surface and get him off? And there was a question about that, and there was comms to the captain. And with a pneumothorax, I don't know how much you know about it, but they can go through under the armpit, or they can go through the top of the chest. He went through under the armpit, got nothing, went through the top and got a partial. I felt like that exasperation of air, but it wasn't a full, lung. So they called it a partial recompression. So then the captain decided that we get him off, so we'll surface and get him off. So I ended up going off and then was in hospital and for a week. And then I came home and recovered for another couple of weeks, and then went back into the base, and pretty much the off crew just ostracized me. So I wasn't part of their crew. And like, you're the guy who was a pain in the ass, because somebody had to fly out to replace me on the boat. And it was like, well, not my fault, but it's like, you know what? we're going to make you do that duty and that shit
Oh,
duty.
God.
There was all of that going on. So I was like, okay, one of the other things, a submariner is pretty resilient, so I can take that. I'm going home every night and I'm not dead. That was the way I looked at it. And then I ended up getting flown down to Portsmouth a lot and checks and this and that. And then they ended up saying, well, you're permanently medically unfit for submarine service. It's
Why
like,
permanent?
whoa. What do you mean? There's a risk of your lung collapsing under pressure. So you can't dive. You can't do that. And I was like, what about flying? We don't know. Right? So we're going to send you back to the fleet. And I said, what do you mean I'm going back to the fleet? I've never been in the fleet, right? I spent a week on a frigate. What does that mean? So they said, well, you can leave. You can choose to leave the Navy and you'll get a slight enhancement in your pension at 60. And I had nobody around me. And this is one of the things I often talk to the men and women that I mentor when they're like, I'm thinking of leaving. Go and talk to people. Because I had the best divisional officer, I said, Pete Chilcott, about 4 years before this. He was the guy that said, come here, young man. You're brighter than you think you are. There's more about you than I see in the average bear. I'm going to take you down to the education office. Start thinking you could go commission. And it's the first time anybody had ever really done that with me. And I have nothing but love and respect for that guy, to the point that that's why he ended up coming back when he left to come and work for me. And he's just such a great guy. As I said, he's down at the Submarine Museum, and everybody go and see Pete at the Submarine Museum. But on the flip side, I had a DO who was just disinterested. And I had nobody to advise me. And my wife's going, well, I'll support you either way. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. We live in Scotland. They could send me anywhere. I don't know the equipment anymore. I've been 10 years doing this. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? It was also late 90s, so we had oil and gas recession at the time. So the usual routes were British Transport Police or normal police or oil and gas. And I'm like, I don't want any of that, So anyway, I made the decision to sort of leave. They still couldn't tell me whether I could fly or not. It was like, try it and see sort of thing. So I came out, and I remember going for an interview, and the guy said to me, I was going for a mechanical electrical technician role. And the guy said to me, can you give me some examples of the equipment that you worked on? And I went, no. What do you mean, no? I need to know what you've worked on. I said, I can't tell you. What do you mean you can't tell me? I said, I'm not being disrespectful. I just can't explain what I've been working on. One, you wouldn't understand it. And secondly, from an Official Secrets Act, I'm not allowed to tell you. Well, of course, I didn't get the job. And I ended up working in a factory for 3 months. Hated every minute of it because I'd lost my community. I'd lost all my people. I'd lost my identity. I'd lost everything. I was lonely. We'd moved to England. My wife had moved from her parents, and we'd bought a little house and we got a mortgage to bloody think about, and we'd gone back to the Midlands purely because it was like a path of least resistance. I might know a few people, but I was working in this factory going, what am I doing? I've gone from this dynamic adrenaline environment where I'm respected and known and I know what I'm doing and I'm Gucci at my job and I'm respected in my job, even though I'm a junior rank. Senior aides liked me and I was good and I was, they thought of me for commission and all that stuff. To what am I doing here? And I remember coming home after about 3 months and I just sat on the living room floor and burst into tears. And it was like this decompression. And my wife said, you need to do something else. Why don't you think about health and safety? Turn your experience into a story. And I very naively and arrogantly then wrote to a bunch of companies to say, I'm an ex-Matlow. I know a few bits about health and safety. I've got my NEBOSH, which I'd done, a couple of years before when we lost ground immunity after first Gulf War. So I was just sitting around. Somebody went, you're going on this NEBOSH course sort of thing. And I ended up doing my apprenticeship, but I threw myself at the work because as much as I love my wife, you know, and she's my absolute rock. I wouldn't be here without her. What I lost was joy. And that's where I think there is this huge thing in the military where your purpose and your job are so intertwined, or you believe that when you take the uniform away or the role away, you lose your purpose. When actually your purpose wasn't that, is like I said before, your purpose was to serve, your purpose was to be a good leader, but you sort of don't understand that when you leave. And certainly that's how I felt.
Yeah, no, it makes, I see what you're saying. I mean, well, I think no, your purpose is gone. You do lose your purpose when you leave, but I think it's only because, and it's different to everything else, I think you need to reorientate what you think brings your purpose and how you find it, right? Because
yes, with
the military, especially in a service like you serve, the submarine service specifically, the job, the culture, they are the same thing.
Yeah, it's your life.
Eating, living, every second of your life for most of your awake time, right? Don't you see?
Yeah,
is the job.
Yeah,
you know, the people you're with, the conversations you have. Totally. Everything is about the job. It's the same. You know, it's the same in a lot of military unit. A lot of the military units, but even more so in specialized units or elite units. Again, submarine service. Sorry, Royal Navy folk. Submarine service, right? It makes complete sense. Sorry, I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
But why shame?
Because I couldn't talk to anybody about it. Because I couldn't. I needed to get how I felt off my chest, and there was nobody that understood it because there was no other submariners to talk to. And then there was like, you know, I'd fail because did I make the right decision? You know, should I have gone to the general service and kept my purpose and kept my dignity? And, you know, it's that thing, you know, I used to be somebody. I felt like that a lot. So what I did do is exactly what you said was, you know, I redefined my purpose. I knew I had PTSD, by the way, from what had happened. And I think I realized how serious it was, although that came years later when watching a movie about pneumothorax and actually reading up on it and going, shit, how close to death was I, you know, in that environment. And I think that also then played on my mind a bit. But I threw myself at, like, you know, kids came along. I threw myself at a new career. I threw myself and find myself really enjoying health and safety because it was about people. I could lead myself. I could lead people. I could make a difference. I could, you know, change it. And, you know, some days it's been good, some days it's not. I mean, I've had the unfortunate thing of investigating 6 fatalities in my life, which are the bad days. But I've also had days when I've really made a difference on a site where somebody thinks differently. And I love that about the job, is that ability to change people's views, get people thinking and changing culture. I love that.
Funny enough, I was sorry to jump in that. I was talking to someone this morning about this. Did I mention it to you? I used to be a health and safety manager, and it gets a real bad rap, right?
Of course,
the vacation, and I can understand why. But also, I really enjoyed it because you mentioned it there. You're influencing people. You're trying to get people to do what you need them to do, right?
Yeah.
And you can't just set a rule and go follow the rule. But people aren't going to always follow it. If you want people to do what you need them to do and influence them, it's like communicating effectively. It's also about understanding. I mean, I don't know what a fucking health and safety rant here, but, you know, understanding what needs to be followed. Because a lot of it is interpretation, right?
Absolutely.
And again, context and environment and all the rest of that. And one rule does not suit all. You know, and you can go from one office to another, and people are going to do things a lot differently. But that's what I like about it. Influencing people, I really enjoy it because health and safety managers get a bad rap. So if you know that, you've immediately trying to get people on side. They immediately have got a bad idea about you. It's like, okay, here's a challenge. Throw me in. And
I 100% agree.
Hearts and minds.
100% agree.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing was I got into construction and suddenly found a squaddie or an RAF person or a Navy person. And suddenly like
an ally then.
Yeah, the crack was the same.
Yeah.
You know, I remember before I go into, because I was working down here at the old BBC. I was teaching risk assessment to pyrotechnic engineers who worked at Doctor Who. So these guys just want to blow shit up. So you can imagine it. But I got in the lift and there was a guy there with a tie and he had a set of dolphins on his tie. And he was on an S boat and we got chatting and we ended up having lunch. And so there was little snippets like that. But I just threw myself at work, redefined myself and just moved away. And then just things like, I mean, my missus said, you know, you can't say no to anything. My lad wanted to play football. I always played rugby. I love rugby. I've always followed football and, you know, I'm a season ticket holder, but I never played football. And
you're a season ticket holder?
Yeah. Wolves. Yeah, I know. It's my colours though. What can I say?
I'm not into football.
But we do have the best, you know, when you go down our tunnel, my anthem of life, my next tattoo will be this, right? Across the top of the tunnel, it says, out of darkness cometh light. Huh. And I absolutely believe,
anthem, is it? Oh, that's cool.
It's a Mayan prophecy, but I absolutely think that is a mantra for us in life because we all have dark times and it can get darker, but you have to understand there's light at the end of that. And I think, you know, we need to really sort of lean into it. But yeah, my lad went at 4. He was like the youngest in his year, so everybody else was 5. And they wanted somebody to run a football team, kids' football team. Nobody did. I'll do it. And I threw myself at it and loved every minute of it because why? I'm influencing young people. It was like being on board ship again, taking the young guys coming on board and nurturing them and looking after them and making them something. And yeah, I just threw myself at that. And then job roles came along and I started working internationally. And as I say, about 10 years ago, I met this guy called Tim Love. Tim, if you're watching this, love you dearly. And he came from, the way he described himself, he was a poor guy in a black neighborhood, white, in Detroit in the 70s. And he was in a, you know, quite a dodgy area. Got into some
white
bad stuff.
White guy, black neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got himself in some really bad stuff. Got helped, as sometimes people do, will reach a hand out.
Well, how was he there? How did he end up there?
That's where he was born. He was just a Detroit guy, and it was that environment in the 70s where, you know, I mean, you can imagine what Detroit's like. But he was helped by a pastor at a local church, and he used to go and I think he tend the garden or something. And one day he was on the bus, and the bus got diverted because of an accident, and it pulled up outside the US Marine Corps recruiting office.
No.
He went in.
No way.
And literally 30 years later, you know Heartbreak Ridge with Clint Eastwood?
Yeah.
He was lieutenant colonel on that base 30 years later.
Wow.
So, and he is
how did
such
you meet
amazing
him?
guy. Through renewables. I was working for Eon. He was in America. He'd left service, become a school teacher, left that after 3 or 4 years when there was a change of leadership, and it didn't go with his values, and got into health and safety. And he is the most humbling, godly, decent human being. And he just introduced me to a load of US vets. And that community is very different to ours. It's very celebrated. When you said you're a submariner, they went, wow, that's an amazing thing. And I was like, really? And I started to go, yeah, man, you need to wear like your veterans t-shirts when you're over. Well, don't even have any. Well, you need to get some, you know. And I remember we were in Syracuse, New York State, very snowy, -20, massive snowstorm. And the night before I'd been with Tim, and Tim had his nose straightened from an old boxing injury. And I said, I bet that cost you a penny. And we talked about, no, I got it done, Veterans Affairs, and that's why you need to talk about veterans more. And I was trying to get home for Christmas. And I got up in the morning, massive snowstorm. I said to this concierge in the hotel, I need to get to the airport. And I said, and they've changed my flight, so I need to get there slightly early to try and sort that out. And she went, right, no problem. The only guy that will travel in this weather is Mr. Singh. Who's Mr. Singh? Mr. Singh's taxis. So literally this Tahoe turns up with Mr. Singh's taxis written on it. Get in. There's a guy. Where are you from? UK. Oh, my brother lives in the UK. Do you know Coventry at all? Well, I work in Coventry. Talked about cricket all the way to the airport. Get to the airport and they give me a standby ticket for my flight I was flying to like New York. And then I was getting a flight from New York to Dublin to home, right? And I'm like, you've moved my flight. Why am I on standby? And we have a rant and not having any of it. And she said, you need to go to the gate and argue your case. So I'm arguing my case. She said, you're number 10 on the list. You know, nothing we can do. And I walked away and I got about 3 foot away and I had Tim in my head. I turned around and I said, and that's how you treat veterans in this country. I'm ashamed. And the world changed. The entire airport stopped, looked, and next thing it come back, it was like, come back. Just let me get a manager. This manager turns up and he said, are you an American veteran? I said, no, I'm a British veteran. Should that matter? And I was really pissed off, you know, and it wasn't me. I don't know who this person was, but he just put his hand out. Thank you for your service. Let's see what we can do. Let's upgrade you to first class. Would seat 1A do? And I was like, got on a plane first, got my flight home, made it for my wife's birthday. World's good. But I was like, actually, there's something in this. I should be proud. I shouldn't feel ashamed that I'm not worthy standing next to somebody who's got 4 medals and I don't have one. Because actually, then you got a medal because of where they sent you. Well, they sent me somewhere. We just didn't get a medal for it. And like, actually, you shouldn't be ashamed if you're, you know, perceived to not be in and that's one of the things that really pisses me off about the LinkedIn community, where it's almost like you've got to be SF to be heard in that community at the moment. You know, there's a lot of people, I'm SF, therefore I'm great at leadership. Well, that's like saying a mechanical engineer is a great manager. Doesn't always work. You learn things, but your service is no more better than his service or her service. So I started to become like an advocate.
Just pull that mic back. You've just knocked it there.
Did I?
Just look, see that goes like this. Like, there you go. Cool. Yeah.
I started to gain advocacy and then started picking up waves and strays. But there was this, there was some shame in that maybe I'd left and not put up a fight, and that's not me. You know, maybe I do suffer with short man syndrome and I won't give up, which is probably why my son's a commando and I love him for that. But I did sort of give up. I didn't have the advice. I didn't listen. But there was a moment, and I think in life, moments happen that define your next path. And the divisional officer I had, when I put my chit in, as we call it, you know, he looked at me and he said, Peters, I'm sorry about this. He said, I'm really disappointed in you. He said, but you'll never be greater than you are stood in front of me now. I said, with the greatest respect, sir, fuck Jesus, you. Yeah. I'll make it my life's mission.
My God.
That's my driving force. I won't say his name, but I sometimes search for my LinkedIn. I haven't found him yet. But in some respects, I thank him for it, because I wouldn't have been tenacious in life, I don't think, maybe. I've been very blessed with some of the, you know, I've been made redundant twice and I've had bad things like that happen, but I've been very blessed with people that have been gracious to me, that I've learned from. I've been inquisitive. That's another thing I talk to veterans about. Go out and be inquisitive. Ask. Look for the experiences. Look for the opportunities, right? Because it will open you. Seek veterans communities. Ask questions of them. Go down the Legion. And if it's just a bunch of old men drinking beer and you don't want to be part of that, that's fine. But go and ask. Go and seek it out. That's, I think, you know, very much been ingrained now, and why I do the advocacy I do, because it's almost like I want people that are coming out of the service who are vulnerable, like I was then, because, you know, if somebody had took me to one side and said, look, you could change service, you could change branch, you could do something different, stay within the military environment. Have you thought of that? No, I haven't. Well, actually, you could. You know, years later, I thought, why didn't I put in for comms technician? I was intelligent enough. I was qualified enough. I could have learnt a language. I could have gone that route. Why didn't I think of joining the RAF or the army? You know, but it just wasn't done back then. Whereas now people move across, no problem at all. I think that's why the advocacy is so important to me. And what's interesting is I've just been through, you know, I've started my own business earlier this year, but I took the decision to leave corporate after 20 years. I've gone through a second transition. And I wasn't expecting it to be like, oh my God, where's my purpose and identity? But I went through the same thing. Not as bad, but I've had to redefine it. I've had to seek it. And the epiphany for me was when I thought, well, if I do an FTE full-time job in corporate, I won't be able to do the advocacy that I want to do. That's when, the business idea came up that, well, maybe I make it more about social impact, be more ethical. So my paid consultancy work pays for the advocacy that I do and allows me to spend time free of charge with charities and help the men and women that serve and their families. And, I just want to do more of that. I want to volunteer for Invictus. I've already spoke to them. I want to be part of that. It's 6-7 mile down the road in Birmingham. I want to be part of that. I want to go and do my bit. I want to be part of the community now. 20 years ago, I didn't. I was ashamed of it, because people didn't understand it. Didn't understand the Cold War. They didn't understand. Life had moved on. Those, Iraq came, Afghanistan came, got all the media coverage. We were forgotten. And I think there's probably 1 million people out there like me. And you see it often at the parades, when I go occasionally. One year I go and another I don't. But this year I'm going to do the Race Remembrance for Mission, which is up in Anglesey.
Anglesey, yeah.
So I'm going to go and do that. But, I go along and a lot of the guys around there, they're Cold War vets. There's about 25, 30 of us. But I think what's interesting as well is, we go back to this, you collect people in your life and sometimes like you meet people, like we've met and immediately we get on.
I think you're an arse, but
I wasn't going to say anything, but even though I'm an arse, we get on. It's bizarre, isn't it? And one of my best mates, and I love him to bits. He's ex-Signals. He did 8-9 years. He was Signals. He's in fact his lad's in the engineers now. He's a Lance Jack in the engineers. And then he joined the police. Did 28 years or whatever in the police, and then he's come out and he works at AXA Insurance now. But I love him dearly, and we just have fun together, and we tell our war stories, and we talk about him being in Germany or when he was based at Hereford for a while, supporting the guys down there, and funny, he sent him to Kenya for 2 weeks and what that looked like, and he was just, I've got him talking about it because he was the same. He just didn't talk about his service. And now we're both fathers of lads that serve. And that's, again, important that we become the role models for them,
Pause there, 2 minutes. My bladder's gone again. Sorry. Is this sparkling water? Back in a sec. Oh. Okay. We are back. Sorry for the break there. No, I get exactly what you're saying. One of the things that I had an appreciation of it anyway when I was serving, because I was very fortunate with serving that I did a lot of different operational tours, and on those we had a lot of attachments to the unit for various different, all manner of different attachments. Signalers, and I work with a lot of signalers now. I've got a day job, and I work with a lot of signalers now, and some of them are real close friends now. Navy guys I've met through the podcast. Real good friends now. And one of the things I had an appreciation of when I was serving, but even more so now, in fact, the orders of magnitude more than when I was serving, is that, everybody brings something different to the party. And in addition to that, what the podcast has taught me, or hammered home to me, is that where service is concerned, regardless of whether an individual thinks they did stuff or didn't do stuff, whether they've got a medal or whether they've not got a medal, whether they deployed an operation or they didn't deploy an operation, they have still got experiences and understanding and knowledge of things that I simply don't have. A real good friend of mine is a guy called Ash Fletcher, and young lad. I think he did 5 or 6 years, 4 or 5 or 6 years in six, Airborne 6. So he was 2 and 6 Signal Squadron. Never deployed an operational tour, and I'm pretty sure that eats away at him that he didn't. I'm pretty sure he joined up to go to Afghanistan, joined up, missed it because it was closing off. He just didn't do a tour. And I think it eats away at him. I may be wrong. Ash, if, I apologize if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure I'm not wrong. It shouldn't eat away at him because he did a load of amazing stuff. The knowledge and experience he's got, when in there is stuff I haven't got, I don't understand, is technical knowledge is something I haven't got. The experience of being an attached arm, of being not the core unit, but being attached to that unit, that cannot be a pleasant experience.
No.
Whether you're a medic, whether you're a signaller, whether you're an engineer, whatever, and you go, right, you're gonna go on this training exercise.
It's like being the physio to the rugby team, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and by the way, you're gonna be with this unit. And you go, what? You don't know anyone in that unit. You go, okay, let's see what happens. And there may be some stigmas around that unit. Power Edge, especially. Totally. Next, especially, right? Right. Special Forces units, you go, oh my God. And then all of a sudden you put yourself under pressure about those things. These experiences don't have. Extremely valuable. And then when it comes to, the veteran community and dick measuring contest between how many medals someone's got and how many medals, again, for the same reason, it irrespective. I see medals, right? I've got some, I haven't got a lot. I haven't got zero. I see medals on other people who've got a rack of medals. That doesn't say anything to me about that person. It doesn't. Right? At best, it says they went to a lot of different places. Does it tell you about the character of the individual? No, it does not. Does it tell you about the capability of the individual? No, it does not. Someone could be sitting there with 50 medals on their chest and be a total arse and could have no one that respects that individual in their service. And and could be someone that the only thing they talk about or that they're capable of talking about is about the operations they did in their military service. They later define, I'm not saying people with 15, 20, 25 medals are like that, but we all know those people. Equally, we know those people who have got little to no visible operational experience. I mean medals, right? And to your point, they're ashamed of that and absolutely should not be. Like, merely the fact that you put yourself forward and decided to serve for whatever reason. Maybe your dad or your mum said, you're going to join the army, you haven't got any choice, or Navy, whatever. But the fact that you went and did it.
And stayed there.
Yeah. Well, even you say that. Yeah. I think even people who go into training, right? And however long they last in that training, let's say a few months, maybe they get to the end of training, right? But let's say they do a significant amount of training, then leave. Even those people, I go, fair play.
Yep.
You chucked your hat in the ring. Absolutely. Or you didn't survive, but cool. Or you did minimum service. Who cares? You've gone and tested yourself, regardless of you've tested yourself. You've done things that most other people will never, ever. That is true. Most other people will never, ever do it. So no one should be ashamed of it. But does it make it easier for people who feel that shame? Like yourself. No, but what does make it a bit easier, I think, is as you I think mentioned, is getting around the community and engaging with people of a similar background, just a military background. It doesn't have to be exactly what you did. Just reconnecting with people that are out because 100%. They all make you feel better about it. Because there's nothing to be feeling bad about. Does that mean you have to throw yourself in and all of a sudden go all the parades and all the associations and all? No, I hardly go to any of that. I'm very lucky in that through the podcast and through some of my old friends from Power Edge, I keep in touch with those. So I'm sort of engaged with the military community anyway, to the level that I am comfortable being.
That's how it should be.
No more and no less. No more and no less.
I think, but being around that community, and though I think those that are strong advocates in the community are the ones that go, you sure you're okay? Because you don't look it. You're not the same. Let's call it out. And I like that about those people. I like the fact that there's always somebody a bit worse off than you or a bit better than you that you can learn off, you can help, you can support, or you can ask. I like that. And I think it's incumbent, I always push that message, it's okay not to be okay. And I think that community will help each other, and the young lady that I was helping recently, had all sorts of troubles. And I said, let's go and find a couple of vets, have a chat with them, other than me. You're near your age, connect with them. And she just messaged, say, oh, a lot better. And I think, there is that. The problem is, with a lot of us, though, is when you feel like that and you go in the dark, you either go one of two ways. You either look for short-term happiness pickups, whether that be drink or drugs or women or whatever. You forget about the shit, so you go that way. Or you go, right, I'm going to prove to everybody I'm going to be this person. So I'm going to do it. Just work 20 hours a day. And you know what I mean?
I need to ask a question. Why did you lump in women with the narcotics?
Because I know some people that do. I don't. I'm happily married. Never had the need.
The drugs and the women. I was hearing negative, positive. Was I hearing
Depends if you're paying for it or not.
Oh, it depends if you're married as well. Yeah,
exactly. But you know what I mean? It's like people either go one of the two ways on that. And there is a middle ground to say, actually, I mean, it bothers me as well, some of that, because it was the old, all a blind man needs is a hand to cross the road, not instructions, sort of thing. At times you just want to sit in the dirt with somebody and go, it's okay to sit in the dirt. I'm there for you. But what a lot of people do, and you get that a bit in the community, is go, well, she was a bit broken. I know that. I feel uncomfortable about that. So I'm going to try and fix you, right? Because that makes me feel better then. It's not about you, it's about me, right? Actually, what you need to do is go, shoot, okay, you might be a bit broken, but should we just go for a beer or sit down and just go watch a rugby, or, are you okay? Do you want to talk about it? Help comes in a different way that way.
Yeah, I know what I do know what you mean. I do dislike a lot of the messaging and the way that a lot of the messaging, the marketing of the, men should talk thing over the last 4 or 5 years. And in that, I think a lot of it's ill thought out. Like, it's almost like it's pitched not at the target audience. The messaging, men cry too, or it's okay for men to cry, right?
Yeah.
It's not the greatest message to pitch at men. Like, it's not. Like, I get what it's trying to say, but it's okay not to be okay, I'm 50-50 with. 50-50 with. It's certainly not bad. It could be better, I think, but this is just a personal one. But I think the key thing is, on the messaging front is, not on the messaging front, it's fact of the matter, it is ebbs and flows, peaks and troughs of emotional content or discontent for whatever reason.
That's life.
And, I think the main thing is, if you get asked how you are, how are you doing, and you're getting asked by someone you trust and they're a friend, they don't have to be a close friend, but a friend, if you're not great, then you need to start saying, I ain't great.
Yeah.
And it's no problem saying that, because, and I've mentioned this before, and I'm really glad that there are people who are close to me, who I, again, sort of shared experience. I know they've had tough times, and they know I've had tough times. And we have this sort of unspoken agreement. It is an unspoken agreement that when we ask each other, how are you doing? And some of them, are exec level. I mean, Paul, I'll name drop something like Paul Godonis, right? Who's been on the podcast, another SIGs guy, actually. Awesome guy. From him to people like Ash Fletcher. Ash was a ranker in SIGs, and then you've got, a few other people who, if they ask me how I'm doing, I will instinctively be honest with them. And it's not like, if I'm having a bad day, it's not going to feel terrible. I'll be like, I'll just say, bit hard work at the minute. And all they're going to say, okay, why? I say, and they're just, because they're interested to know.
Well,
right?
That's the key thing.
Why?
If you ask somebody, how are you? You have to be front and center, interested in their answer.
Yeah.
Not, how are you? Yeah. And I'm walking out the door. I want to understand, but not to fix you. No. Just to help you.
It's empathy. It's showing a genuine interest in the well-being of your output. Again, not to fix. And I may say, not sure. And sometimes if it happens like that, and I may not be sure.
Well, I think the other thing as well is, a lot of people think, I remember talking to a guy who'd been an alcoholic, and he said, they think that stage one of problem solving is I'm an alcoholic today, so I need help, right? That's not stage one. Stage one is something's wrong. I have no idea what it is, but I just know I'm not right. Stage two is, well, I think you might be an alcoholic. And that's like any problem solving. It's that the most important step is going, I don't know what it is, but I just know this isn't normal to feel this way. I need to do something. And that's what happened to me. Yeah, I mean, there's an area in mine where I suppressed everything, and we were looking at advanced first aiders at work. And we were going to make all our offshore technicians advanced first aiders. And I insisted on going on a pilot course to, make sure it was properly organised and everything. And on the day 3, they pulled out a stretcher and they said, this is a Neil Robinson stretcher used offshore, And I volunteered to go in it. And you put all the Velcro straps, right? Because it's one of these bendy ones and it folds around you. And I remember a strap going across my chest. And then I remember being in the toilet, putting water on my face with a horrified instructor going, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why?" He said, "Because you've just turned into like a miniature Hulk." And I bounced a couple of people off walls and destroyed his stretcher. And I was like, "Oh, that's a bit strange." And then about a week later, I got on an airplane, which I did every week. And I'm sat in the window seat, and suddenly this rise of panic, and I couldn't breathe. And it was a proper full-on panic attack. The old Flyby planes with the propellers, one of them. I had to ask the guy next to me, "Can you move? Can you move? I need to get out of the seat." And he was very gracious. He swapped seats and everything. And I'm like, this is a bit fucking stupid and wrong. But these things started to creep up then, and it started to get a bit more. And luckily, I'd got people like my wife and Mrs. It was really amazing to say, you need to sort your shit out. Something ain't right, because you shouldn't be feeling that way.
Panic attacks are a major flag. Major flag.
Oh my God. It was just like, and then I ended up, I was lucky enough I had Bupa, and I ended up embracing therapy. And actually, I went right down that rabbit hole to the point that I shout about it now, that if you get the right therapist, you've got to find the right connection. But when you do, it's brilliant, because it's not going to completely fix you. It's not like a finite thing. You have 10 sessions. It's not like antibiotics, right? You might need 2 or 200. It doesn't matter. It's the process of how you figure that out. And the thing that she bottled was, and something I had never consciously thought about, but she unbottled the fact that, the shame came from feeling guilty of what I put my wife through. She had to leave home, leave her parents, move country, start a new life. And I saw that as all negative. But when she said, you need to do a session with your wife to say, what did you think? Well, I was actually quite excited about it. I always wanted to leave home and go and explore new opportunities and work in a different country and all that.
Oh, interesting.
So the story I told myself was the complete opposite of what she felt.
Yeah.
But I carried that guilt and burden and shame, and it's all like, all in the box, you know what I mean? And I think that's the thing. So
yeah. The key is to talk, and going back to, I just want to make a point on those conversations with, for example, with Paul or with Ash, when we ask it, and if I say, maybe I'm not great, I'm not talking, like I'm having a meltdown or I'm having some episode. I'm literally just, I'm very glad, now that my emotional states, I think, are just normal. Some days I'm stressed because of obvious things, work or self-induced pressure or whatever. So other days I'm anxious, and the anxiety is a bit of a different thing, but it's they're normal levels, I think. But irrespective, I'll still answer honestly, because I know that they'd be annoyed if I wasn't answering honestly. I also know I'm not going to get the Spanish Inquisition. Yeah. And I also know that simply saying it offloads some of that negative emotion and helps you get over it.
Totally.
And you're probably just going to go get past anyway.
Yeah.
But also because I want to demonstrate that, hey, I'm being honest with you, and I would, and silently we're saying this to each other, I would hope you be honest with me if you're on a bad day, and they are. And those two aren't just they aren't They aren't the only
pulls
examples,
you out of it. I mean, there's a good friend of mine, Nathan, and we never served together, but I met him through football. He came out after 30 odd years and owns this microbrewery, and he's had a lot of struggles, and I've always been pushing him, you know, in the sense that I'm there for you when you need it. And he phoned me a few weeks ago and he's like, so how's it going? I said, oh, it's a lot better now. I said, I've got, some work and feel really reinvigorated, and I can see the social impact I can have. And now I've got some paid work coming in, I can do that. But that first few weeks, was really, really dark, because it was like, what have I done? I've got a mortgage to pay, and, you need courage to start your own business. And I just love the fact that he went, well, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you call me? Why didn't we have a chat? Why didn't we have a sit down? You're just nothing but a cockwomble. And he just made me laugh, because that's a phrase you just don't hear, right? And but there was a sincerity behind what he's saying. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I should have called you. He's like, well, don't let it happen again then. But you need people like that in your life.
Yeah, I got a friend who, a guy called Luke, and Luke Hardy. And when I was at my worst, and I'd had a couple of real bad times, which I won't go into detail on it. But after the first or the second time, we had a conversation on the phone, and he said, why the fuck did you not tell me? Because we were talking regularly at the time anyway.
Yeah.
And I explained to him then, which you will know, which a lot of people will know, or maybe don't know, is when you're really dark, when you're in a really dark place, most people in that position, the last thing they want to do is talk to people, right? Let alone talk to people about the feelings, and you're gonna mask it, you're gonna cover it up, and I would just go, how's things? Yeah, fine. And on the surface, I would look fine. I'll be trying to, I'd be functioning normally. In reality, I was an absolute train wreck. And he had that conversation with me, and he made, and I was getting I was frightening myself at that point with what what my mind, with the place my mind was at. And he made me promise that when I was feeling at my worst, to call him. And he said, call me if you're feeling like that. If you call me, I'll answer the phone. I won't give you the Spanish Inquisition. I won't go interrogating you, but just promise to call me. And I did. And I remember the first time I did, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever done, because I was calling someone to say, I was basically calling someone in my mind to admit weakness. And I was calling to someone when I should be able to fix it myself. And also, when we were serving, he was a subordinate to me. He was much junior to me, and it's just a different time. He's older though in age, not than me. He is older than age than me, which is a weird dynamic. We're like I said, we're good friends when we left, and so ringing a subordinate as well in that term to go, hey, I ain't great. The guy you used to rely on when we were in, to look after you and to put the mission together properly and get you're back alive. In reality, that's what it was. Yeah. Now I was telling him I wasn't good. And I did when the first time I called him, rang him a few times, and I'd ring him, he'd answer the phone, and he'd say, hey mate, how are you? And I would say, and I would choke up every time. I'd be fighting it back, the words to say, I'm not good. If I was going to say, yeah, I'm fine, I wouldn't have choked up on that, but simply saying, I ain't good. And he would hear it in my voice. And he wouldn't ask me why. He would just be like, so what have you been up to? How's things? How's the girls? Daughters and blah, 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 blah.
Show you reference points.
Everything else. Because he understood that just me saying that was a help. And if he was to start interrogating me, maybe I wouldn't call him again. Yeah. And just by doing, and that triggered me, wrong wording, but that process with him there, that was probably one of the major steps that led me then to go in and get informal help. Because I had that guy there who said to me, you fucking call me, but here's the boundaries. I ain't gonna inquire.
It's like call out, isn't it?
All he's saying is, I just want you to tell me when you're not good.
It's that thing about the story you tell yourself is, if I speak, that's a sign of weakness. What the story has to be changed to a narrative that the weakness is not speaking. It's more courageous to speak.
Yeah.
And actually, once you tell yourself that story, that courage is me telling you I'm not okay, actually, well, I can embrace that courageousness then, because I can go all in on that. You know?
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's yeah. I agree. You look at it like this, right? If you were literally, if you're a guy, and I'll say about guys, guys are worse at it. If you're women, if you're a person listening to this now, and you're not in a great place, right? And you're literally thinking, you're resonating with what Marcus has talked about, your experience and what your feelings, and or myself, and that you're feeling that way, right? Especially where men are concerned, like, you are not as capable as you could be or as you were, and you will be feeling that, right? So if you want to get that back to that position, you're not going to be able to do it by yourself. Probably not going to be able to do it by yourself. So in order to get back to being the capable person who you have your utmost self-respect, which you probably don't have now, but you should have, but because of the way the state your mind is, and you just don't have it. If you want to get back to being a capable, individual with self-respect, and you want to feel like the man you feel like you were before, or to feel like the man that you feel like you should be, then go and use all the tools at your disposal. You do it with physical fitness. If you get an injury, normally we'll give a bit of rest. You give an injury a bit of a rest, bit of a niggle in my knee. The niggle's not gone after a week, or in my case, after months, because I'm a flipping moron, right? Niggle's gone. What do you do then? Yeah. Maybe at that point these days, you'll Google it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Still can't fix it. What do you do then? You go and seek help from other people. Either you'll ask advice from someone you know, or you go to the doctor. It's the same for men.
My mate gave the best night. He said, it's like you've got a car, the engine don't work, you're not a mechanic, so you'll fuck around with it, and it still doesn't work. And you end up going to a mechanic and go, Christ, why didn't I do that earlier? That's all it is. And it's absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a mechanic. If I need the car fixing, I'm going to go and take it somewhere who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And if my head's not working, I'm going to go and talk to my friends and go and see somebody who knows what they're doing. And, it doesn't have to be PTSD. It can be anything. I think the other point is, I didn't, and I preach this a lot now, is when you're leaving service and the transition, and when you're in dark times, if you've got, and you've been blessed like I have with an amazing woman in my life that's been with me for 30 odd years, but the service impacted her. And we shouldn't forget that actually when that NCO is leaving on a med discharge, he's got a family and children around. It will impact them. And actually the thing that, if you genuinely, you care about your girls, right? That drags you back into a slightly different place as well, because you always put them first, because that's your mission. As a parent, your mission is to look after your kids. And now I'm suddenly talking a language we both understand. We have a mission back. So actually, if I'm going off mission because my head's not in a good place, I need to get back in mission to look after my girls. Do you know what I mean? I think there's a lot of that we don't talk about either.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But no, it's a complex sort of discussion, but it's an absolute one that the community needs to talk about.
It is complex, but I think at times it's overcomplicated.
Totally. I think there's a lot of labels and attachments, and I don't like that. But I think when it comes to the community, it's back to what I call, I care, we care. If I care about myself and I care about you, and you do the same, we're going to be okay, because we can talk.
Yeah.
So.
We've got a few questions left to ask or answer before we close this off. Okay, so there are a couple that we had left over from the icebreaker, and then we've got a load in the. I think we've got a load in the YouTube live stream chat from Cook. Okay, so the couple left from David. You said some mentoring chats turn into real sparks of optimism. What makes those moments click?
I think it's being present with the individuals that. I think there's a fundamental difference between coaching and mentoring. And, coaching, I'm trying to transmit information that's going to make them do something better. Mentoring is empowering them. It's the old Churchill quote, it's about getting somebody to do something without them realizing it. And I think that's the beauty of mentoring, that when you see your vision that you want to happen, they end up doing that, but it's all on their terms, their decision. Those are the light moments where you go, that's great. I had somebody recently where, we've had a lot of discussion about next steps in career progression, and they've gone and applied for a role and got the role, and they're so super excited about it. It's like, great. left the breadcrumbs, they followed, they did it. But it was all their decisions,
Mhm.
you know? That's the beauty of it.
Another one from David. What's the best thing mentoring has given you, and why should more people get involved in it?
I just think there's a beauty in doing a righteous thing. I think mentoring is. If you're and don't get me wrong, a mentee and a mentor have to have, a bit like a therapist, has to be the right relationship. You don't just go to any mentor. You've got to find the person that fits personality-wise, advice-wise, experience-wise. But I think there is just that something, it's a bit like parenting, you know, when you see the journey that people go on a mentor, you can see that journey and you can give them ideas, and I can say, well, you could try this, this, or this. Why don't you go away and think about it? And they come back, oh, I've really thought about that and I've done some research. I really want to do this now. Can we talk a bit more? That excitement and enthusiasm, I'm enthused by that. And that takes me into a different place, you know? Mm-hmm. So I really, that's what I think. There's nothing better than, particularly as you get older, to be able to, you know, give back to communities that are meaning something. And, you know, with Greensforge, what I do now is I'm doing that with a lot with the younger HSE professionals, mm-hmm. trying to get them to say it's not all about regulation. It's about people. We've got, you know?
Yeah. Okay. Now we're into the YouTube chat questions that are left over. From Coke. If you could safely experience service in any past naval conflict, which would you choose?
Wow. Probably not World War.
Safely. Okay.
Probably not World War II, because 1 in 3 submariners died in World War II.
Well, no, safely. You say.
Oh,
so you survive. You're guaranteed to survive.
Well, it's not very safe, probably. It's really interesting. I completely abstract. I quite like Roman history, and I quite like, you know, the idea of being a Roman auxiliary somewhere. Just that entire, it's probably not very safe, but, you know, if you could go and, I don't know, be born in Spain and end up on Hadrian's Wall, just that complete abstractness. Do you know what I mean?
Wild times.
It's like, you know, my uncle was in the 8th Army, and I've got pictures of him in Cairo, and he never left the Black Country. So how do you, it's like landing on planet, it's like the first time I ever went to Arizona, and you land in the desert and you go, this is Mars. Yeah. There's no reference point that is the same, apart from the cars, and even they're a bit bigger and noisier. But you know what I mean? What must have that been like? So probably Roman times.
Yeah. Okay. Are Marines, RAF, and Army treated better or worse than sailors on a ship or boat?
Well,
Marines, RAF, I'm treated better or worse than sailors on a ship.
Well, RAF are now on the aircraft carriers, which I just don't understand that at all.
You don't understand what?
Well, the RAF have a squadron of F-35s that serve on aircraft carriers now.
Yeah.
I can't get my head around that, because surely that's the job of the Naval Air Service, but either have one or the other, don't mix it. So I don't understand that bit. Squaddies don't like ships because there's that watery stuff, and they don't like swimming, and your boots clunk on ship, and we just tell you to stop it. So they get shouted at a lot. You know, walk quietly.
What do you mean the clunk? Have you got soft soles or something?
Yeah. Anti-static as well. And on submarines, noise is not good, because noise travels further in water.
Yeah. Well, one of the things when I went on Talent, actually, which amazed me, the sonar ping, I didn't know you could actually hear that.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a sound coming
and
from
when it comes back,
you can actually hear it through the hull of the ship from another sub.
Yeah.
I'm not just a sub, but I didn't know that.
It's an interesting thing. Yeah. But I think sailors get the bad rap because it's like, you just, you know, my son said, oh, you're just the taxis for the Marines. And I went, yeah, look at your ID card. It says Royal Navy. You're G4S for the Navy.
The softest service. I'm just going to point it out there, right? Now, I apologise to my RAF friends and previous podcast guests. The softest service of the three, okay, is the RAF. They are on a different planet.
Yeah.
You go on an RAF base, it is a different world.
Totally.
The language they use, the way they interact with each other. Where was I?
The food's great though.
The food, the food is good, honestly. And listen, this is just relative to my experience in the military, in the army, I should say, in the army. Anyway, if I was going to join up, right, and all I wanted to do was serve and have a pretty easy time of it, right? I would join the RAF.
with high-tech kit.
I would join the RAF.
Yeah.
Honestly, the RAF. I don't know as what. It wouldn't be RAF regiment because they do hard stuff. The RAF, everyone else in the RAF doesn't, right? That's not saying the RAF people aren't capable.
No.
Right? I'm just saying it's a pretty easy time, guys.
I tell you, fun ditch, my first interaction, we went on a Hercules and my mate was petrified of flying. And on the Hercs, the crewman that basically sorts the toilet out, drives the forklift and does the door, but he looks like Tom Cruise. They all look the same, don't they? Got his Gucci fucking Ray-Bans on and everything else. And he comes down with a pad going, tea or coffee? Tea or coffee? Right, so he's doing that job as well. And he still looks like Tom Cruise. And we're like, we hadn't took off. And my mate is like petrified. And you know, at the webbing, he's like holding the webbing, you know, on the side bench. And this guy says to me, what's wrong with him? I saw he's petrified of flying. He went, there's nothing to worry about. He said, the pilot's a failed tornado pilot and it's built by the cheapest, lowest bid contractor. Nothing to worry about. That was my introduction to the RAF.
Okay, is the head of the Navy, Quinn Jenkins, good? Ex-SAS J. Carl claimed he... Oh, this is the recent podcast. Yeah. Ex-SAS J. Carl claimed he investigated Special Forces soldiers he knew were innocent for murder to make himself look better after the BBC criticised. Criticised.
I have no view on that bit. What I can say is my son's met him in the gym. He was
Quinn Jenkins?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was down at Livingston recently and he was in the gym, just training on a morning fizz. And he took time to speak to some of the lads. He comes across exceptionally well. I think he was heavily involved in sort of future commando force. Love or loathe that, but he was heavily involved in that. I just think they wouldn't have put him in place. There were admirals there that could have got the job. They see something in him. And all I can say is from all the interactions that I know others have had with him, it's very similar to Al Khan's. He comes across as a very decent human being. And Al Khan's, by the way, gets a special mention because when we were at National Transition this year, he was on stage. He interrupted my driver's briefings that I was doing. So I've got 100 people every 30 minutes and he overran. And I had to go up and tell James Cameron, who was with the minister and his secretary, I said, you need to get him out of here. I said, no disrespect, sir, but while you're in, all this lot are in, and I've got all these veterans I need to get in and brief. And he goes, oh, yeah. And James says, oh, by the way, this is Marcus. And I said, all right. He said, oh, nice to meet you. He said, oh, Marcus volunteers for us and the Royal Marines charity. He said, oh, you're ex-Marine? I said, no, I'm not. I said, but my son's in training. Oh, tell me more. Who's his training team? And we had a 5-minute chat. And he was like, right, nice to meet you. And he turned around and I went to get up onto the stage and I heard this, Marcus. And I turned around, he walked back towards me, put his hand out. He said, I wish your son all the very best in Royal Marines training. And I thought, that's class, because you don't have to do that. That's sincere, right? Mm-hmm. He's not an MP in that moment. He's just a Royal Marine wishing a bootneck wannabe all the best. And that's class. So, yeah, he gets a special mention for me.
Okay. Is the military good at holding to account those who have done wrong? Coke, who's asking this question, loves this topic.
I know.
Loves this topic.
I can only talk for the British military. I think there's been a lot of high-profile media cases, as we've discussed, that have proven that they need to do better. But what I think that does is stains 99% of the people that are actually decent human beings doing a decent job. But as in always, the media have a certain angle on it. That's not to distract for the men and women that those cases involve, need to be brought to task. If you do wrong, there needs to be a consequence to that. And that doesn't matter whether you're in the military or not. That's just the way life should be. So I think they can do better. C+, let's say.
Okay. Right, we're gonna pick one you as a last question. Did you did you have any strange initiations when you were new to the submarine service or to the frigate?
Submarines, you get like there's not really any like brutal like hazing or anything like, drink. Well, drink is a big thing, but you don't get any of that sort of top shelf or any of those sort of drinking games. But you did get like, the lung weight and all that sort of stuff.
The what?
Go and get a lung weight.
Oh, right.
So you go up to stores and you just stand around for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Right. Or tartan paint or whatever, And anti-sonar black paint was one. And like they used to send lads up to stores and like, they just like, they go, yeah, and they go, that's not the anti-sonar one. You need to get the anti-sonar one. So you back up, all the way up and down. The one they got me was they had this like dental putty. And basically we went in and I got this, we were doing something at the bottom of the missile tube. And I got this dental putty all over me and not knowing what it was. And they sort of put it in there to take a mold off a bit of machine that they were going to machine down. So it was like a mold, right? But I got it on me. And I came out and this chief goes, could be radioactive. I'm like, what? Hang on, we need to get the gear, need to check that after radioactive. What I didn't know was there was a test button. So you go,
with the
so it's like,
with the detector.
Yeah. That's it. Bag him up. It needs to be bagged. You're radioactive, mate. You're gonna have to be bagged up. So the next thing you know, you're in like a big suit and all sorts, and like then they get the medics in on it, and like and you're like starting to panic. What's going on, and like they're putting a BA set on you and all this. Got to encapsulate you from the rest of the crew, and it takes you like an hour, and you're sweating your tits off, like just yeah. That was quite funny.
God.
Looking back, quite funny, but.
Oh my God. I would not have wanted to serve on a nuclear submarine at all.
Well,
no, thank you. No, especially after some of the stuff I got told when I went on.
Yeah, but you jumped out of a perfectly serviceable aeroplane. I mean, what's that all about?
But they're not wandering around a nuclear warhead, mate. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
mental.
Yeah.
Marcus, it's been a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure for you.
What have we? Okay, name your business. How do people get hold of you?
Right, so I've got a very long title. It's called Green's Forge Performance Solutions. We specialise in HSC performance and cultural improvements, but we aim to put people first. So it's not about metrics and regulations and KPIs. We want to put people at the centre of caring, because I genuinely believe if we can make people care more at work, we'll care more in society. Because safety shouldn't be a 9-to-5 thing. It should be everything. And if we care more and make the world a kinder place, that should be our mission. So.
Yeah, cool. And mission renewal as well?
Yeah, so I'm doing I support 3 charities. I support the mission community, which is a really worthwhile cause. They are looking at sector initiatives and how you connect the armed forces community across different industries. So at the moment, there's a mission automotive for the automotive sector, mission renewable for green, clean jobs, and I work heavily in that sector. I also support the White Ensign Association. I do pro bono work for those guys, which is a charity based on HMS Belfast, which is for the naval community. So it's Fleet Auxiliaries, Navy, Marines. And obviously, with my son being in the Marines, I support the Royal Marines charity as well. And I do various employment workshops and one-to-one advice for those guys. But I also do all services on a one-to-one mentoring basis. So.
Cool. Been a pleasure, mate. Really enjoyed the chat.
No, I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much indeed.
And good luck with everything.
Yeah,
and
appreciate it.
I need to get up to the Submarine Museum.
Let's do the Submarine Museum in Cosford, because once you finish the book, we need to go up to Cosford.
Perfect.
We'll do the 2 of them.
Perfect. Cheers.
Perfect.
Dude.
Thank you.
And we
Cheers.
are